what you are doing in this hour. I thank you for what you are doing in this time. And I thank you, Abba Father. I thank you because of your faithfulness. You are faithful, Father. And you are the one that as we turn our face to you, you are faithful to change our circumstances. And sometimes that circumstance change is going to require that we are going to come out of there with a limp. Because when we really start to seek you wholeheartedly, you will reveal to us the deeper things that are there. And sometimes it's going to have to take us going through a severe struggle where we need to wrestle with you in order to be able to come to a place that we may be able to overcome with you. And so, Father, I thank you that we can come into this time as we are in this time of great darkness, and just like Jacob had a fear, many of us might have hidden fear that is within our hearts with the things that are ahead of us, with the things that are coming upon the earth. But Jacob needed to humble. I pray that you give us the humility that we need in order to acknowledge that in our own strength we cannot face the giants. In our own strength we cannot face the enemy. The enemy is far greater than what we are. But when we are totally and utterly submitted to you, to your purposes and to your plans, when we are totally humbled, then you are the one that will fight for us, and we will hold our peace, just as you did with Moses when he needed to cross the Red Sea. The Red Sea was in front of him, and the enemy was behind him. But he needed to humble, seek your face in what it was that you wanted to do for him. And so I thank you, Father. I am so excited tonight, Abba, in order to bring this message, because this is for me one of the most powerful lessons in our Bible, to understand these end times, to understand what you're doing in these end times. And so I praise and I thank you, Father, that you will open up our spiritual ears, open up our spiritual eyes, bring the depth of your word forth, because we want to come to a banqueting table with you, to be able to come and feast on your word. And I ask you, Abba, that you would open up the mind of our understanding in order to feast that which you want to give us from your word as a revelation, so that we may be able to walk in the truth that you want to give us. And so I praise and I thank you for this in Yahushua's name. Amen. Amen. Sorry, when I looked, I didn't even have the recorder on with the prayer. I completely forgot to put the recorder. But praise the Father, it is now on. So, praise Abba Yahuwah. Let us just recap a little bit over last week. We saw that Yaakov was to return to the land of promise in Genesis 31 verses 3. And in Genesis 31 verses 7 to 8, we see that Laban has been deceiving Yaakov, as Yaakov tells his wives what he has been doing. He changed his wages 10 times. From Genesis 31, 9 to 13, Abba Yahuwah is Abba Yahuwah of the recompense. We looked and we saw how he is able to recompense, that even though the enemy comes in like a flood, he will raise a standard against him. The enemy can want to annihilate us. The enemy may want to come and steal from us. The enemy may want to come and steal the promises and the blessings. But we need to understand, when the Father has given us a promise, when the Father is the one who's gone before us, and he is the one who has given us a promise from his word, then there is nothing that the enemy can do, because at the end of the day, Father will have his way, because he is Yahuwah of our recompense, and he is the one who will deliver us from the hand of our enemy. There will come a day that he will deliver us and he will help us, because of His promises. His promises are true. And if He has promised us deliverance in His word, then that is exactly what He will do. All we need is just to trust Him. He's the one that will fulfill the promise that He has already spoken over our lives. And this is what we must understand. If He's given us a promise, then He's the one who's going to fulfill that promise. Here we see in Genesis 31:17-18, we see that Yaakov gathers his livestock and he is going to leave. And he doesn't even want to say anything to Laban. He leaves like a thief in the night. But at the end of the day, he knows that if he were to be able to tell his father-in-law that he was leaving, he might not have been so willing to allow him to go. And so in Genesis 31 verses 19, here we see exactly what happens, because Rachel takes the household gods. We see the evil of Rachel. We see that her heart, at the end of the day, is not truly trusting Abba Father. Rachel, we see that Rachel here, we see the heart of Rachel. Here we see the heart of Rachel. We see the idolatry that is within her. I mean, by this time, she has already been given a son. Joseph has already been born. She should have seen by now that Abba Yahuwah is a faithful Yah, that He is the one that is faithful in order to be able to answer her prayers. But yet, how faithless was she? Because she still wanted to put her trust and her faith in her household gods. We see that Joseph, he becomes, from Joseph, we understood, like I spoke last week, he is eventually going to have two children, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Manasseh is the firstborn, but again, the secondborn gets the blessing, the double portion, and that becomes Ephraim. And Ephraim eventually becomes the house of Israel, where there's the house of Judah and the house of Israel, because a split takes place. And it's interesting because that's the very house that goes into harlotry, into idolatry, and that eventually Abba Yahuwah divorces. In Genesis 31:24, we see that Abba will speak even to those that don't know Him. Abba will speak even to the heathen to protect you. He will fight for you. All we need to do is hold our peace. In Genesis 31 verses 26, that there is a lie, they are his wives. You know, Laban turns around and says, you know, that they are his daughters and they are mine and everything is mine. But yet with him we must understand. We see here that Laban has been, father has appeared to him in a dream and told him, you shall not do anything, not good nor bad to him. And we see here how he is speaking and saying, but it's, you know, my daughters, but yet it's his wives. So even though he's saying all these things, but we must understand that at the end of the day, it is still, you know, it's still his wives. Then in 32, we see here that Rachel, once again, when Laban comes to Rachel, and he's wanting to be able to know he's looking for his household gods. Rachel is not saying anything. She instead says to her father, she's in the time of womanhood and she doesn't want to be able to get off her camel, and she's hiding those household gods and she doesn't want to get up, and she has an opportunity to be able to come clean. She has an opportunity from verses 34 to 35 to come clean, yet she lies. Why did she need the household idols when she had seen what Abba had done for her and for her husband? She has seen what the Father has done to bless her husband. She has seen all of this before her. She has seen what the Father has done, where her husband has come away with much wealth, even when her father tried to deceive him, because Jacob is putting his trust and his faith in the Father. He has learned from his grandfather Abraham, from his father Isaac. He has learned the way of being able to seek Abba Yahuwah. Then from Genesis 31, from verses 36 to 42, here we see all that Jacob has gone through. By the works, by the fact that he was working for his father-in-law, he worked for 20 years, and we see a true servant of Yahuwah, who took the loss for himself, served without complaining, and did what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah. For this, Abba Yahuwah is his recompense, and he has been his righteous judge. And so you must understand, Father is the one who sees all things. So don't worry if man doesn't see what you do. Don't worry if man is still accusing you before people and speaking bad behind your back and don't understand you and don't understand what you're going through. Because some of us go through many things, and the thing is that people don't always understand our walk. And so because they don't understand our walk, they judge us. They look from the outside. And when they look from the outside and they look in, they don't know your heart. They don't know what you go through. They don't know anything about you. But yet they will be quick to want to judge you. But you see, Father saw everything that Jacob had done. Father saw that Jacob was righteous. Even when there was, one of the lambs or whatever that would fall, get sick, he would take the loss because he knew that he couldn't come to his father-in-law and speak to him about it, so he would just take the loss. And he saw his work that he did in the cold, in the heat, yet he served. And that is what Father is looking for. Father is looking for a faithful servant, one that will serve him without griping, without moaning, without complaining. Genesis 31:43. Here we see the arrogance of Laban. Here we see that he would not have let Yaakov go, as the attitude is everything was his. So when we look at Genesis 31 verses 43, we hear exactly what he says. That for Laban answered and said to Yaakov, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine. But what shall I do today to see my daughters or their children whom they have borne? So you see, we must understand that there was an arrogance about Laban. Everything is, it's mine, it's mine. It sounds like a 2-year-old. You know, when the 2-year-olds, when they have the real flesh nature in them, everything is about, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. And this is the attitude of Laban. And that is why Jacob knew that if Father had not gone before him, if Father had not been his recompense, he would have left there with nothing. Because Laban didn't even see how he was blessed. Instead of him standing back and saying, you know what, my son, since you came amongst us, my goodness, look at how our animals have multiplied, that there was never one that went with, there was never any miscarriages or anything, but they just reproduced, and how our wealth has grown. But instead, Laban is going to chase after him, because now he still needs to put his trust and in his faith in his household gods. And you see, this is what I say. How many people truly put their trust and their faith in Abba Yahuwah? Or do they put their trust and their faith in their flesh? Do they put their trust and their faith in their job and in the finances and in everything that they have, because they think everything is mine? I achieved all of this. But what people do not understand, that if the Father does not give you that grace, He gives you the power to obtain the wealth. He tells us in Deuteronomy chapter 8, He gives us the power to be able to have that wealth. And so nothing is from ourselves. But yet Laban thinks that everything is of himself. And so in Genesis 31 verses 44 to 48, they set up stones and make a heap and make a covenant. Laban calls the place Yegar Sohuduth, which is the witness heap, and Yaakov calls it Gilead, which is heap of testimony, and they set up a watchtower, Mitzpah, and the word Mitzpah is a watchtower. And then from verses 50 to 53, we see that Laban still goes the daughters as being his. He still says that the daughters are his, but makes covenant. They make a covenant and have a meal and part in peace. Because Abba is the one who has told him that he must go and he must go into the land. And so we have a look at tonight's lesson, and we will continue with Genesis chapter 32, as we have got such an exciting chapter to cover here tonight. And in Genesis 32, Yaakov went on his way, and the messengers of Eluah met him. And when Yaakov saw them, he said, "This is the camp of Eluah," and called the name of that place Manyahim. Manyahim means two camps, battle camp. And Yaakov sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir and the field of Edom. Because he knows he's on his way back to his father, he's on his way back to his land. And so for him to be able to go back to his land, he's going to have to come face to face with his brother. And so understand, he's going to come face to face with the enemy that wants to kill him. Remember, Esau already wanted to kill him, and that is why Yaakov had to flee. And he commanded them, saying, "Say this to my master Esau, your servant Yaakov said this, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now, and I have bulls and donkeys and flocks and male and female servants, and I have sent to inform my master to find favor in your eyes." So he's now wanting to send a messenger to be able to ask for favor from his brother. You see, so many times we want to find favor in the eyes of man. But we will understand that the only favor that Yaakov is going to need is not the favor of the eyes of his brother, but it's going to have to be the favor of Abba Yahuwah, because that is what's going to be the deciding factor in the end. And so the messenger returned to Yaakov, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you, and 400 men with him." So you see, this changes the whole ball game, because now you see Yaakov is sending him to be able to say, "Look, I'm on my way, and I'm coming to you," and now all of a sudden he hears that his brother is on his way to him, but he is coming with 400 men. And understand, there is nothing that Yaakov has not that kind of men that are going to be able to stand up against his brother. And Yaakov was greatly afraid and distressed. So he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and camels into two groups. So he was greatly afraid. You see, this is the place that we find ourselves. Many people find themselves in the hour that we're in. When a new variant comes in, and it's a new wave, and it's a new variant, and now it's a more powerful variant, and it's a this, and it's a that. And then we become more afraid, because now, you know what, this thing is just becoming worse. And then some people become even more afraid. What are we going to do in the face of the enemy? This is what Yaakov is doing. Yaakov is now going to have to face his brother that's coming with 400 men. And he is he was greatly afraid. He wasn't just afraid, he was greatly afraid. And so you must understand, we have an enemy. And many times we hear reports and we hear things and things that come our way. Like yesterday, I was watching a video. And this video that I watched is how there's the train coming with more than 50 of these armored vehicles into this nation. And I'm saying to myself, okay, Father, why do we need so many armored vehicles? And this train was driving with a mission, and it was going with all these armored vehicles. And I say to myself, what is coming that we need all these armored vehicles? Do you understand? Now, you can either look at this in two ways. You can look at this and get greatly afraid, or you can look at this and say, well, you know what? I know my Father is for me. I know that my Father is for me. And if He's for me, I'm going to hold my peace. The one who fights for me, He will fight for me. And I need to stay in the shalom. And all I need to do is to be able to pray. And I know the promises that the Father has spoken. I know the words that He has spoken. And you see, this is what we need to see, what's going to transpire in this story that is so important for us to understand this evening. And so it says, and he said, verse 8, and he said, if Esau comes to one group and strikes it, then the other group which is left shall escape. And Yaakov said, O allure of my father Abraham. You see, now there is only one solution. There is only one solution. And the only solution that there is for him to be able to turn to Abba Yahuwah, because he is the only one that is going to be able to help him in this time. He is the only one that is going to be able to go before him, because he cannot fight his brother and 400 men. So now he turns to the one that he's got to put his trust and his faith in. So you see, who do we put our trust and our faith in? Do we put our trust and our faith in the things of the flesh? Do we go back into Egypt? Do we go back to be able to turn to the things of the world in order to give us the solutions that we need for the places and the times that we find ourselves in? Do we turn back to the things of this world? And this is the revelation that you need to get tonight. Tonight you need to get a revelation, because this is an account that you are going to need to impart into your heart. It must be embedded in your heart, in your mind, so that when the time comes, when you are going to be in a time of being much afraid, you are going to have to understand Yaakov and what Yaakov did and what Father will do with each one of us and for each one of us. And now Yaakov said, O allure of my father Abraham, and allure of my father Isaac. You see, he needed to be reminded. He is the Yahuwah of his father Abraham, of his father Isaac. He is the faithful one, the one that is given the promise from the beginning. Yahuwah, who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I do good to you. So you see, he's being reminded of the word that has been given to him. He's being reminded to say, if I'm going to return back to the land, because he was sitting comfortably at Laban, when all of a sudden the father was started to say to him, you need to go back. You need to return. So he's not going on his own esteem. He's not going on his own strength. There's the key. The key is if you are obedient to the Father. You see, when you listen to the word of what the Father gives you, then there will be a blessing in that. That's where the blessing is. So the most important thing is to obey His written word and to obey His spoken word to you. Because when the Father speaks a word, you must know it shall be as He said it will be. And you do not need to fear. And yes, the circumstances might look like it's not going to work like that. And the circumstances might speak a different message. It was the same as when I was diagnosed with cancer in my body. And the Father gave me a word. And the word was, this sickness shall not end in death, but it shall be for the glory and the honor of my name. And so even when I had to go back to the doctor, and the doctor told me that now the cancer's at 70-something% and it could have spread in my body. And now he's got to send me to this specialist, and now I've got to go in for a procedure of a colonoscopy and a gastrectomy, and they got to go check everything, and they checked every spleen, and now they got to check the liver and the intestines and everything, because now he's so worried because the cancer has spread. But yet Father had given me a word right in the beginning when I was diagnosed to say, this sickness will not end in death, but it shall be for the glory and the honor of my name. And so when the enemy came up against me, and when the woman turned around when I was sitting at the hospital and she said, oh, what beautiful hair you got. And the devil said in my ear, not for long, not for long. Because you see, if I have this thing in my body, I'm going to have to then have this hair fall out. And I said, get behind me, Hasatan. Get behind me. My Father has said to me that I am going to be fine. And so you see, the enemy will throw every stone at you that he can to be able to derail you, to be able to put fear within you. But you have to stand on the word that he's given you. That is why, in the face of your storm, in the face of your difficulty, you need to seek the Father to get a word. You need to seek the Father to give you a word. And when he gives you that word, just like he gave to Jacob, he gave Jacob the word, and he said that I do good to you. Return to the land and I do good to you. So he had a word that he could hold on to. And so that is why the most important thing when you're going through a difficulty is to turn to the Father in prayer and let him give you a word. You need to hear his word on the situation. Not your own word, not going to throw things at him. You need to sit quiet before him and allow him to speak to you in the situation. And let me tell you something. You best make note of that word that he gives you, so that when the time presents itself and when the time arises, you've got that word to be able to hold on to. And now he says, you see, so first he gives him the word. And he says, you are the Yahuwah. So he first acknowledges Abba Yahuwah, who he is. And he says, you are Alua of Avram, of my father Avram, of my father Yitzhak. You are the one. And then is reminded of the word that he's given him. But then he humbles. So we need to humble before the Father. I do not deserve the least of all the loving commitment and all the truth which you have shown your servant. For I passed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become two groups. You see, that was his plan. He put one group on the one side, another group on the other side, because he was much afraid. And he thought, maybe if I put two groups, then if he attacks the one, then maybe he attacks that one first, and then he was not going to get to me. That was first his plan. He went and did his plan first. So you see, so many times we do our own thing first. We go to plan A first. Plan A, no, we actually go to plan B before we go to plan A. Plan A is just seek the Father and let him do the work. But we go plan B and plan C and plan D. We make our own plans. Now he really humbles himself and says, deliver me. You see, now he has realized. He's humbled. He's come before him. He's tried to do his own plan. He sent his men ahead to Esau to be able to tell him, look, please show me favor. Now he's, wanting to separate camps and everything. But he's saying, deliver me. I pray from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and shall strike me, and the mother with the children. You see, it's always important that we become honest before the Father. Confess your fear, because your fear is sin before him. Confess it. Confess the things that are there that need to be confessed before the Father. It doesn't help you to hide behind it. It doesn't help you to sit over there and want to speak all these things, but yet you're not even confessing. You need to humble before the Father and be able to confess what is in your heart. Be able to confess what you are going through. For you said, I shall certainly do good to you. Then he's reminded again. You see, now he's humbled. And now that he's humbled and he's confessed his sin, see, everything here is a pattern. How we need to pray. We exalt the Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We hallow his name. We raise up his name. How many times we sit and we see David starts in a very dreary way, starts complaining, and the next minute, the minute he starts to raise up the Father's name above everything, then all of a sudden his problems were no longer bigger than the one who is the one who's the deliverer of all the problems. So you see, when we start to exalt his name, we'll understand that he is exalted above our circumstances. He is exalted above our fear. He is exalted above whatever situation we might find in our lives, because we need to exalt him above the situation. We need to worship him. We need to raise him up. So for you said, I shall certainly do good to you, and shall make your seed the sand of the sea, which are too numerous to count. And now he's again being reminded. Imagine, this was more than 20 years ago when the Father told him this. But that promise that he told him 20 years ago when he was sitting, and remember, he had that vision that he saw of the ladder in the dream. He had the dream of the ladder while he was sitting there, and the Father speaking to him and giving him his promise. He's being reminded of that. So you see, instead of you getting yourself into all panic and going into a panic attack, sit quietly and remember, what are the prophetic words that the Father has given you? What are the prophetic things that he has spoken? You know, that is why I am so grateful for my journals. Because whenever the enemy is out to want to get me, and then I come under persecution, and people start to persecute me, and I go through, and once that happens, then the enemy climbs on the bandwagon, and then he wants to take me to the cleaners. And then I need a day out, and I go sit before my Father, and I come and take out my journals, and then Father, how many times speaks to me, and I write things down as he gives me promises and as he speaks things to me. And then I need to pick up those journals, and I need to read the words of the things that he's spoken to me. And then I start to become encouraged, and I start to be strengthened. And then I shut out the voices of the enemy. And then the only voice that speaks within me is my Father's voice, to come and solidify his word within my heart, to know that he's the one who's in control. And everything else becomes very dim when I turn my face towards him, because he's the only one that can come and encourage me in that hour of trial. And he spent the night there, and took what came to his hand as a present for Esau, his brother. So you see, now he's ready to even give his brother of his inheritance. You see, he's now paying back that which he maybe took in a deceptive way of the inheritance that he received. He's willing to pay it back. He's willing to give it to his brother, to say, whatever I have received, I'm willing to keep a portion, but I'm going to give back to Esau what I took from him. So once again, he is now wanting to set the slate clean. He's wanting to make a right for where he went wrong. He's wanting to be able to bless his brother for that which he took from him. 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 suckling camels with their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 foals. That is a lot. That is a lot that he has going to give his brother. But you see, this is where you see he has humbled. There's no more arrogance within him that he just wanted to take his brother's blessing. Now he's willing to give back. He's willing to lay low. He's willing to say to his brother, you know what, my brother, as Abba Yahuwah has blessed me, I want to bless you. I want to be a blessing to you. And he gave into the hand of his servant every drove by itself, and said to his servants, pass over before me, and put some distance between drove and drove. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong, and where are you going, and whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Yaakov's. You see, look at what he's saying. They are your servant Yaakov's. He is humbling. He didn't say they are your brothers, your brother Yaakov's. They are your servant Yaakov's. Yaakov is humbling himself. You see, this is what we need to do. We need to humble. And when we humble, he lifts you up. He will lift you up. If you remain in a humble place, he's the one that lifts you up at the appointed time. All he wants is a servant, one who will humble. And at the appointed time, he lifts you up. That's why he says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of Abba Yahuwah. Resist the devil, and he shall flee. So if we seek his face and we humble ourselves before Yahuwah, then we resist the devil, and then the devil will flee. So it is a present sent to my master Esau, and see, he also is behind us. So you see, now he says Esau is his master. Do you see the difference in the play of words here? He's willing to take the lower place here. So he commanded the second and the third and all who followed the droves, saying, speak to Esau the same word when you find him. And you shall say also, look, your servant Yaakov is behind us. For he said, let me appease him with the present that goes before me, and after that see his face, he might accept me. So he is still hoping that by him being able to give his brother back, to be able to come with a blessing towards his brother, not acknowledging the fact that yes, he has done his brother wrong in the past, but now he wants to make right. He wants to be able to bring restitution between that which had gone wrong. He's coming with a humble heart. He's realized that his brother's got 400 men coming towards him, and he wants to try and please his brother. You see, he is still behaving in a way in his flesh as Jacob, thinking, well, if I bless my brother and I give him all of this, my brother's going to be fine. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford of Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the stream and sent over what he had. And Yaakov was left alone. You see, this is now when we're going to see Yaakov has understood one thing. If he's going to be confronting his brother as Yaakov, the one whose name means supplanter, the one whose name means deceiver, the one who has deceived him, he's not going to stand. He's not going to be able to stand. He knows that as in his flesh man, he has no strength to stand before his brother. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now amazing. He's obviously gone into a time of prayer. And there's a man that comes and starts to wrestle with him. And when he saw that he did not overcome him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Yaakov's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Sure. So now there is a wrestling going on. Who is this man? Interesting. It doesn't say that it was a messenger. It says it is a man. So who is this man? Isn't it amazing? This man is Yahushua himself. Have we come to the place of where we wrestle with him? Have we come to the place of where we surrender to him? Have we come to that place of where we come and we will wrestle with him and we will seek his face until we find him? Because this wrestling is very symbolic of that which needs to be able to happen in our lives if we do not have this encounter with the Father. If we do not have that encounter with our Messiah, then we stay in this flesh nature. And the flesh nature, no good thing comes out of a flesh nature. And now it says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I am not letting you go until you have blessed me. How bold is that? You see, Yaakov understood that this was a being. This was a heavenly being. This was the Messiah himself. And he wants his blessing. He wants his blessing. Why? Because he understands that if he is going to be able to stand before his brother as the name of Yaakov, as the man Yaakov, he doesn't stand a chance. But if the Father is able to bless him, then he is the one who goes before him. You see, here is one of my most favorite verses that are here. It's one of my most favorite stories in the Bible. Because why? In verse 27 he says, so he asked him, what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. You see, he asked him, what is your name? You see, Father will ask you about who you are. And he asks you, who are you? So that you may be able to bring this flesh nature before him. Everything of who you are. You know that within you, there's no good thing. You know that within you is, we need to come to the place of wrestling with Abba for him to change our story. Because he's asking him, who are you? What is your name? And you see, he knows that his name means supplanter, means deceiver. And if we do not come to that place of where we wrestle, how can he change our past? You see, he needs to change his past. He needs to change the past of who he was to the man of who he needs to become. He needs to become Yaakov. He needs to change from being Yaakov to becoming a new man. You see, it's so important that we need to have a change of identity. And the only way that we can change our identity is when we are willing to give Abba the identity of the flesh man that we are. So you see, Natalia will come before Abba Yahuwah, lay herself down and say, Father, you need to come and change the person that I am. This person that I see that I do not like what I see. So that the Father can change our past to change how people see us. You see, because when he's going to stand before his brother, he needs to have had that the Father changes who he sees to who he needs to become. He was going to confront his brother as Yaakov. If he was going to confront his brother as Yaakov, supplanter, deceiver in the old nature of who he was, he would not have made it. As his brother is coming with 400 men. You see, when we want to stand before the enemy, in that old person that we were before, the one that wants to constantly turn back to the works of the flesh, we cannot stand before the enemy, because the enemy will take us to the cleaners. And that is why we need an encounter with Abba, for him to change our story, for him to change that fallen nature of man to be able to come to a place where we are no longer deceived, where we can have our identity changed. So you must understand, what does he say? He says, he asked him, what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. And he said, your name is no longer Yaakov. Your name is no longer called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have striven with Eloah and with men and have overcome. So you see, when you finally strive with man, and you come and you wrestle with Abba Yahuwah, you wrestle with him in prayer, you wrestle with him through fasting, you wrestle with him, you lay your life down, you lay down and you say, Father, I need you to come and change my story. I need you to come and change my life. You see, you must understand, the bride is in a place of where she is like Yaakov. The bride is deceived and will remain deceived, because we are living in a time of great deception. And if she does not come and humble herself and wrestle with her king, for him to be able to come and open up the eyes of our understanding so that we can submit and surrender to him. You see, we need to become Israel, because what does Israel mean? Israel means to strive with El. It means to overcome with El. It means to rule with El. He's now Israel, the father of the nation of Israel, the father of the 12 tribes of the house of Israel. And we must understand, Father wants to change our name. And even if he doesn't physically change your name, he wants to change your identity. He wants to change the identity of one who begs to one who's going to be seated with him and rule with him. He wants to change an identity of one, and this is what's so important. He is in the process right now. This is the time that we are in, leading up to the Passover, leading up to us being able to come into that time of Passover. You see, we need to pass over. We need to cross over from a place of where we are deceived by the doctrines of demons that have kept us captive for years and hundreds of years, that have kept us deceived, to becoming people of covenant, to becoming people of promise, to being able to raise up to be everything that Abba Yahuwah created us to be. We need to come into that place. We need to take our stand. He is wanting one who overcomes. Because in the book of Revelation, how many times does it talk about those who overcome, those who overcome, those who overcome? That is what Israel means. Israel means to overcome, to strive with El, to overcome with El, to rule with El. And he had to change his name. Because you see now, he is not going to stand before his brother Esau as Jacob the deceiver. But he is going to stand before his brother Esau as, Jacob is going to have to stand before his brother Esau, not as Jacob, because he knows in the flesh man of Jacob is still that deceiver, is still that one, that that Esau is going to see him as the man who came and stole his blessing. That's what he's going to see. Because he's been holding the grudge against his brother all these years. And he needs to see him in a different light. And so we see that he has striven with allure and with men. So see, many times we got to strive with man. We got to go through many things, because you see, when he comes out of here, he comes out with a dislocated hip. Remember, what did he do? He touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Yaakov's hip was dislocated when he was wrestling. So you see, many times the Father takes us through a time of wrestling. What is your time of wrestling? What is it that He's had to take you through in order for you to be able to finally get to the place of humbling? You see, because many times we will not come to that place of humbling until we are really in a difficult place. When you're up against the wall and you've got an army coming towards you and you don't know which way to turn, and the only one that you can turn to is your Creator. The Creator of heaven and earth. He's the only one that you can wrestle with. And that is why we need to understand that without wrestling, we cannot become strong. You see, the more you have to go through wrestling, the more you go through difficulties in your life, the more you have testimonies that make you strong in your faith muscle that you need to develop. See, a faith muscle doesn't just come along. A faith muscle is developed when you're willing to be able to stand by faith in the face of adversity, in the face of the difficulty. When you take your stand and you say, I will not be moved, no matter what the enemy brings against me. So we see that after him wrestling with Yahushua, he's left with a limp. But you see, that limp has brought about a change in his name, a change in his character, because you see, he humbled. His whole change that took place was a humbling. He was able to stand and raise up Abba Yahuwah's name. Say, you are Yahuwah of Avram. You are Yahuwah of my father Yitzhak. You are the one that has said you would do me good. He was the one that he was going to put his trust and his faith in. And so you see, many times we need to go through a process. We will fight the enemy in our own strength at times, just like he was trying to come up with a plan in his own strength. But you see, we need to be able to come out of that place where we have been so deceived for so long and come into truth. You see, this is now when he's going to raise up in truth. But the only way that we can come to truth is when we really wrestle for truth. See, truth isn't just given. And this is what we must understand. Let's go look at Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 11 to 14. So in Jeremiah chapter 29, this is a wonderful example of what we need to go through. Because you see, there are some people that all they want to do is just pray, but they're not willing to go through a wrestling process. They're not truly willing to seek Abba Yahuwah with everything, with their whole heart. They're not willing to seek Abba Yahuwah. So in Jeremiah chapter 29 from verses 11, you see everybody stops at verse 11. You do yourself a great injustice if you stop at verse 11, because everybody knows verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, says your word, to give you a future, to give you a hope. You know, we all know that verse. But let's carry on reading what he says. And then we will understand what has happened here. So we look at Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 says, For I know the plans I'm planning for you, declares Yahuwah, plans for peace and not for evil, to give you a future and an expectancy, to give you a future, to give you a hope. Then you shall call on me. So see, those who will call on the name of Yahushua, he comes and brings them salvation as they call on his name. You've got to start by calling on his name. You've got to start by giving your life to him. You see, that's the outer court. That's where you go through the door. He became your deliverer. You are in this tabernacle and you come in the outer court and you call on his name, he died for you at the stake for you to enter into your process with him. But then you shall come and pray to me. So then you go a little bit deeper. Now you're not just calling on his name, you are now praying. So now we start to pray our prayers, and we start to ask him to help us with this and do this and do this and do this. And we do a lot of prayers. It's a lot of prayers that we come and we ask him. We pray for a lot of things. And it says, and then you will come and pray to me. But you see, as long as we're still praying, it says, and I shall listen to you. So he's listening. He's listening to all your prayers. And he's seeing, what are your prayers all about? Is it still about me, myself, and I? Are your prayers still centered on you? What are your prayers about? You see, Jacob started with a prayer that he was saying, deliver me from my brother. But then the prayer changed to saying, I want you to please bless me. I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. And now he says, I shall listen to you. So see, he's listening to see, when are you going to get to the place of truly seeking him with your whole heart, needing him more than the air that you breathe. This Jacob, when he was there with this wrestling with this man, he knew that he needed him. He knew that he needed him to change his identity, to change who he was. There was a great need of the Father's presence at that moment. And now listen. I shall listen to you, and you shall seek me, and shall find me, when you search for me with all your heart. So when is the only time that he's going to be found by you? Not when you're just praying. When you truly, with your whole heart, start to seek him as the very air that you breathe, because you know he's the only one that you need in your life right now. And you don't seek him because you're seeking him for seeking him. You seek him because your love for him. Because you come and knock on the door and say, Father, I want you to fill me with your presence. I want more of you. I want to know you. I want to know who you are. I want to serve you wholeheartedly. I want you to reveal yourself to me, Abba Yahuwah. See, you shall seek me and shall find me when you search for me with all your heart. And I shall be found by you, declares Yahuwah. See, now you shall be found by him. So he's listening to your prayer to see, are you still in your superficial little place? Are you still in your little fleshly little place where it's still about me, myself, and I, and I'm still running my little kingdom? Or are you finally going to get to the place of humbling and giving yourself fully and totally to him? And he says, and I shall be found by you, declares Yahuwah, and I shall turn back your captivity, and shall gather you from the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, declares Yahuwah, and I shall bring you back to the place from which I have exiled you. So you see, we are in exile. And then he brings us back to that place of where we can once again come into intimacy with him. Because little prayers that are just little prayers is not intimacy. Intimacy is when we walk with him in the cool of the day. That is intimacy. And so now when we look, let's go to Revelation chapter 12. Because we are to become this Israel. Understand, he's changed this man's name to Israel. And now we are those that are to be grafted in to remember. We are working through this chapter by chapter, book of Genesis, to understand covenant, to understand that Father has made a covenant, and we are those. If we have received Messiah Yahushua, who did he wrestle with? He wrestled with Messiah Yahushua, because the day was going to come that it was going to be Yahushua that was going to be the one that was going to bring us into the fullness of our identity as becoming Israel. You can only have the fullness of the identity of Israel once you have received Yahushua. How do you have the identity of the house? When we're going to read these scriptures, we will understand. We need to follow the Lamb. And who is the Lamb? The Lamb is Yahushua, spoken of in the book of Revelation. So who is going to be the true house of Israel? Those that will be in the fullness of having the covenant written upon the tablets of their hearts, and they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. So let's look at Revelation 12, verses 11, because we have read, what is Israel? Israel means to strive with El. So we have strived with El. We are going to overcome with El, and we will then eventually rule with El. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb. You see, how are you going to overcome anything in these last days unless you have received Messiah Yahushua? That is who Yaakov wrestled with. That was prophetic of what was going to come. The house of Israel is going to wrestle and come out of the deception that she's been in order to be able to come into the fullness of the identity of her Messiah. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their witness. So see, if we have not overcome anything with our Father, what witness do we have? If we have not wrestled and we have not had to go through many destruction and many things in our lives, how are we going to be a witness? You can only have a testimony when you have overcome a test. A testimony comes after a test. And they did not love their lives to the death. So see, they're humbled. See, they're humble. They're not about themselves anymore. They have laid down their life for the one that they serve. If you want to save your life, you are going to lose it. But if you lose your life for his name's sake, you shall surely save it. Let's have a look at Revelation chapter 15. From verse 2. And I saw like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those overcoming the beast. So you see, there are those that are going to have to overcome the beast in these last days. And those overcoming the beast and his image and his mark and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding harps of allure. So see, if we are willing to go through, we will overcome. If you are not going to have to stand in the face of your enemy to overcome, how are you going to overcome? And they sing the song of Moses. Wow, interesting. Why the song of Moses? Why is Moses being featured here? Because that's going to be the covenant, you see. Because this is all building up to a covenant. They will sing the song of Moses, the servant of Eloah, and the song of the Lamb. Wow, who is the Lamb? The Messiah. Saying, great and marvelous are your works, Yahuwah El Shaddai. Righteous and true are your ways, O sovereign of the set-apart ones. So you see, this is those that will overcome. This is true Israel. That is now going to, from here, Jacob is now going to become the father of this house of Israel, that even we are grafted into, according to Romans chapter 11. And so as we finish off, we have a look and we see, as we carry on, it says in Yaakov, verse 29, and Yaakov asked him, saying, please let me know your name. And he said, why do you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. He didn't reveal himself and his name, because this was for the time to come. Now he has come at the appointed time and revealed his name as Yahushua. This And then he says, and Yaakov called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen Eloah face to face, and my life is preserved. So do you see? What does Peniel mean? Peniel means the face of Yah. It means facing Yah. So you see, if we do not have a Peniel experience, face to face, if we do not have a face-to-face experience of where we have to humble ourselves, you see, that word Peniel, Penuel, comes from the root word Panah. And Panah is to turn. Panah is to turn towards, it's to approach, it's to behold, it's to look. So we need to turn our back on the things that the enemy is doing and saying, and turn our face towards our Creator, the one that we need to behold, the one that we need to approach, the one that we need to turn towards, the one that we need to be able to turn to, the one that we can look and gaze upon his face. That is the one. And that is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of the thigh, and Yaakov in the sinew of the hip. So you see, many times it's in that place of where we are going to be humbled. You see, he needed to hit him on the hip to be able to bring him down, humble him. And you see, this is a place of where we must understand. Father wants us to be in that place of humility. So in this difficult place, we might come out of there with a couple of bruises, a couple of scratches, laying down many things in our lives. But after this, we will walk face to face with our Creator, because that is what He wants. So we want this face-to-face experience with our living El to come and change our story, to come and change our character, to come and change our past, so that we can be those that will overcome in the days ahead. So that man cannot see us through the eyes of what was in our past, but through the eyes of how Abba has spoken over us and sees us, so that we may be filled with His glory. Let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank You, my King. Oh, what a powerful message this account and the story is, Father. Such a powerful revelation of what we need for the days ahead. Only those who seek will truly find. Only those who truly seek. Only those who truly seek will find. Only those who are truly going to seek Your face. Then You will deliver us from the place where we have been held captive. The same as it is that only by Jacob being able to come face to face with You, is he going to be able to face his brother Esau, not in his strength, but his face has changed, because You are the one that is now shining Your light upon him, and his brother will give him favor, because when You bless us, no man can curse us. When You bless us, no man is going to be able to come against us, because You are the one who goes before us. And the enemy comes face to face with You and not with us. So Father, help us, I pray, in this time, that we will truly humble ourselves, that we will truly not try and fight these battles in our own strength, but that instead we will humble ourselves before Your mighty hand, knowing that You are the only one that can be able to come and set the captives free. And so I thank You, Abba Father, for that which You are going to do in our lives, as we come like Yaakov, humbling ourselves before you, wanting to wrestle with you, for you to be able to come and have your way in our lives. We want this Peniel experience with you. We want this encounter with you so that you can change our story, so that you can change our story for your glory. May we never be the same. May we not be those people that we were before. May we be those that will be able to strive with you, that we will be those that will overcome with you, and that we will be those that will rule with you. I praise and I thank you for this in Yahushua's name. Amen.